Hello. Today's Friday the 10th, apparently, of April 2020. I was told I must make a Zoom video from the school's website, but Zoom is gone. So there's some miscommunication or something. I don't know why, but at any rate, I have to make something, so I'm making this video, and I hope I'm not blocking the screen too much. So I guess I'll just start. It's 8:50. I've been working at this for quite a while already, and I had to give up on using the school's system at all. Hope you can hear me. Maybe just as a help. It doesn't help. Let me try this. Hello, 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 hello. Sorry, I needed some caffeine. Let me try this one. Does this work? Well, it works rather too well. Now I need to just close the door. Please wait for me a second. No one else showed up? So at any rate, I'll be here. Let me test this microphone one more time. It does nothing. Nor do the goggles. And I can turn this down probably. Okay. Oh, that helps so much. How's this? I'm pressing it. How's this? These buttons do nothing. Hello? Hello? No, it's useless. Well, another useless thing today is nothing special, really. Okay. So anyway, here we are. This is week 6. We have several things to talk about. And the first thing in the list is the 18.2 preface to lyrical ballads, so let's take a look at that first. Lyrical ballads, and this is absolutely what I'm going to put on the exam. So please remember that Lyrical Ballads was originally published in 1798. I always put that on the exam. If you miss it, you miss it. But I'm telling you, the answer is 1798 for the first edition of Lyrical Ballads. The preface to Lyrical Ballads came out in the second edition, which was 1802. You may want to jot that down. The two poets were nearly the same in age, although Wordsworth lived longer. Wordsworth was born in 1770. Lived until 1850, a good long life. Coleridge was born 2 years later than Wordsworth, lived only until 1834. Okay, so really what I want to focus on today, I'm just going to move down here. Here's the preface. I've asked you all to take a look. Hi. To take a look. Oh, I'm Anna, by the way, in case you never have come to class. There are people like that, I think. In the preface, I asked you to look mostly at the highlighted bits. Oh, this word is wrong. Okay, I'm going to change that. Actually, I just did. All right. So let's see what Wordsworth was talking about and what his purpose was for writing his contributions to lyrical ballads. Okay, the first volume of these poems has been already submitted to general perusal. In other words, anyone in the public could have read it and taken a look through it. It was published as an experiment, which I hoped might be of some use to ascertain how far, by fitting to metrical arrangement a selection of the real language of men, and that's the key phrase, real language of men, natural speaking, the way people really talk, in a state of vivid sensation, that sort of pleasure, that sort of pleasure, and that quantity of pleasure may be imparted, which a poet may rationally endeavor to impart. Impart kind of means to provide or to share with people. I had formed no very inaccurate estimate of the probable effect of these poems. I flattered myself that they who should be pleased with them would read them with more than common pleasure. So in other words, he guessed that people would like it with more than common pleasure, and they really did. On the other hand, I was well aware that by those who should dislike them, that they would be read with more than common dislike. And those would probably be the writers and the readers who were used to the older style from the 1700s of very grandiose poems about gods and kings and magical people and stuff, using very high-level educated kind of vocabulary instead of ordinary vocabulary that people really use. And the main result is that he is pleased a greater number than I ventured to hope I should please. Good. Wordsworth is talking here not as if Coleridge and he were equal partners. He said, I was induced to request the assistance of a friend, didn't even name Coleridge, who furnished me with the poems of the Ancient Mariner, the Foster Mother's Tale, the Nightingale, and the poem called Love. Only 4 poems. I wouldn't have asked for his assistance if I didn't believe that the poems of my friend would, in a great measure, have the same tendency of my own. That there would be no discordance in the colors of our style, even though they're different writers. Our opinions on the subject of poetry almost entirely coincide. So we have the same opinions about poetry. Okay. Several of my friends are anxious for the success of these poems from a belief that if the views which they were composed were indeed realized, a class of poetry would produce well adapted to interest mankind permanently. So if we put a more cynical attitude on this, he's saying that he hoped that these would be commercially viable, that people would like to buy the books, and so he could make money. And also be a trendsetter in the poetry world, be more famous too. It turns out that Coleridge's attitude is quite different, though, and I'm getting to that later on. Let me move forward here. Low and rustic life was generally chosen to be the subject of this new kind of poetry. In other words, poor people, country people. Because in that condition, the essential passions of the heart find a better soil in which they can attain their maturity and are less sorry, the grammar is strange to me because I'm not of his time, are under less restraint, and they speak a plainer and more emphatic language. And I guess one way of saying that is people in the country don't talk like city folk with extra fancy manners of speaking. They just speak, directly and clearly. And when they, have a strong emotion, they say they have a strong emotion. They don't try to downplay it and say, oh, I'm rather interested in this. Instead, I'm so excited about this. So, yeah. The bell is ringing, but I got such a I got such a late start. I'm going to just continue now. Okay. He says that the manners of rural life germinate from those elementary feelings. So the feelings are very basic and universal feelings. And that's the way the country life is like. He said, from the necessary character of rural occupations, in other words, farmers and people like that, these feelings are more easily comprehended and are more durable. And lastly, because in their condition, the passions of men are incorporated with the beautiful and permanent forms of nature. And we know that Wordsworth kind of deified nature, which reminds me of a comment I got in my doctorate school. Because they spoke with less influences of social vanity, as I just told you. All right, good. Let's move to something else. Oh, here's the general approach that he uses when he writes poetry. Okay. Matter of fact, I memorized this quote a little bit incorrectly, but let me go through the highlights here. He says, all good poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, but this is not a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings at the moment when you're feeling the feelings. I'll go on to the next part, which is also very important, because you need to feel these strong emotions, so strong that you can't contain the feelings, with a little Midnight Oil reference there. These need to be feelings that you experience, and then they pass, and then these poets who have deep feelings think about their experience for a long time. They think very deeply about them, as it says here. Our influxes of feelings are modified and directed by our thoughts, which are indeed the representatives of all our past feelings. I think that I made the emphasis on the word all, but I'm not absolutely certain because I did this years ago. By contemplating the relation of these general representatives to each other, we discover what is really important to men. Sexist language, but this was 1802. I can't, pardon me, I'm still waking up. I can't see right yet the rest of the quote that I remember better. The way I remembered it, and I'm sure he says it somewhere, is the best way to write poetry is to experience the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Meaning that first you have the experience, and then you think about the experience, and then when you're calmed down and you feel peaceful and happy, that's the time to write about the feelings. You don't want to be freaking out with strong emotions and write the poem right then, because that would turn out to be kind of chaotic and maybe too strong. He has said, he says, each of these poems has a purpose. And I have also informed my reader that what this purpose is will be told, namely to illustrate the manner in which our feelings and ideas are associated in a state of excitement. And he gives examples of different ones here. One of them is the maternal passion, the feelings of great love of a mother for the children, as in the idiot boy and the mad mother. Some people cling to solitude in life and society, as in the Forsaken Indian poem, and We Are Seven, which we read last time. 2 weeks ago, oh my gosh, for some reason last week, everyone kind of decided to take a siesta, and I still don't know why. And other things too. I like Simon Lee very much, that's a good piece. Now here's something that he's making a comparison between the popular poetry of the late 1700s compared with his poetry. He said there's one other circumstance which distinguishes these poems from the popular poetry of the day. It is this, that the feeling therein developed gives importance to the action and situation, and not the action and situation gives importance to the feeling. And he recommends a couple of his pieces called Poor Susan and The Childless Father, especially at the end of that one. You can easily find these if you want to. I'm not going to spend time teaching every poem of these. I'm going to go into this. Okay, let me read this bit here. He says, our elder writers like Shakespeare and Milton are being forgotten and neglected by frantic novels, sickly and stupid German tragedies, and deluges, meaning floods, of idle and extravagant stories in verse. So these are three kinds of books which he considers low class and not very good quality stuff. Novels, German tragedies, and stories told in verse. And Wordsworth does write stories in verse himself, but I guess they're not idle in his eyes. I'm going to keep going here. He mentions that the reader will find that personifications of abstract ideas rarely occur in these volumes. Okay, that's fine. And why does he say volumes? Well, it's because the book was originally books. It was published in more than one individual book as part 1 and part 2, or whatever, something like that. Hey!
I couldn't log into your meeting, and I was wondering, is it my problem? Because
Probably not.
I couldn't talk.
Okay. Please be patient for a second here. Zoom is totally gone from the school's website.
Oh, okay.
So I can't use Zoom. So I'm making a video of the class with my camera, and when it's done, I'll upload it there.
So what should we do today? So there's no class today?
There's no class today. I mean, this is the class. And once it's done, I'll upload it to the e-class, and you can watch it.
Okay, so no class today.
There's no class for you.
So basically, we just watch your videos.
Watch my video. That's
every
all.
week, like that.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Zoom or some other thing that's like Zoom will appear. It's just the MOE canceled Zoom and said don't use Zoom, and so they're probably going to find a substitute.
Okay.
So maybe next week will be different.
How about the roll call and the testing?
I don't know what the hell to do about that.
Because I got the email from Barry Chen.
Oh yeah.
He said we must log into that.
Yeah, but it's gone now. They just suddenly took it away. So I'll tell you what. In the video, I'm going to tell people to send me an email, and I'll tell them one special word to include in the email. And everyone who watches the video will know what the word is, and they'll send me an email, and then I'll know that they watched the video.
Great idea.
Until somebody just says, the secret word is blah, 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 and then the rest of the people will cheat, but there's nothing I can do about that. So, yeah, that's the way I'll do the roll call.
The test then?
Sorry?
How about the test?
Oh, God, I don't know. This is week 6. We have 7 and 8 to prepare. Actually, I can do an exam from the E-class, I think. Oh, add exam. So I guess I'll do it that way. I've never tried it before, so I don't know at all what it's going to be like, but I'll try.
Okay, sure.
And if I figure something out, I'll put it into a video.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Great, thanks for asking.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to tell me your information, and I'll put you into the roll call sheet as being here today.
Oh, yeah. Jerry,
I have not yet got anything done with this, but this is week, oh wait, wrap. Okay. Okay, you wanna just,
no English name.
yeah, I don't have the English names yet.
Oh, this one.
Sorry to block you.
This one.
Okay, great.
There's the English name.
Oh, it is right there, Jerio, yes. Good. And, oh, Faustina, of course. I'm sorry that my memory for names is really bad. But you have a great name. Okay, good. And I'll put you both as here. Thank you. The roll call thing that I mentioned just now is also an opportunity for you to tell me your English name. And so I'll have to set this up with all the English names. Okay, very nice. Where are we and what time is it? 9:13, okay. All right, well, let's continue, and I'll just do it this way, I suppose. He says, I have proposed to myself I'm continuing on. I propose to myself to imitate and as much as possible to adopt the very language of men, against sexism in action, and assuredly such personifications do not make any natural or regular part of that language. So in other words, he means that they're not using personification like putting a character representing an idea into the stories. I wish to keep my reader in the company of flesh and blood, which means real humans, not imaginary ones. I mean, they're imaginary to a point, but they're just like people that he actually meets most of the time. Persuaded that by so doing I shall interest him. Right. What's next? So, because of this, he does not do a lot of the same kind of fancy language which poets have been using in recent times. He doesn't use fancy language. Many of these expressions which he's referring to here have been foolishly repeated by bad poets. Okay. He's been criticized by some critics who saw how plainly he was speaking and said, that's not the way you write poems, that's the way you write garbage. And he's saying, no, this is on purpose, I'm doing this on purpose. Okay, what's next? Oh, hey, I'm going to be talking later on about the graveyard poets in, I think, the English literature class. Here's one of them, Thomas Gray. He says, the language of these lines does in no respect differ from that of prose. It sounds just like regular writing, such as he's doing now. He says, even one more time, as far as possible, he uses a selection of the language really spoken by men and women, and it's non-binary people. You didn't know about them, I guess, probably. Okay, what else we got? He thinks about the meaning of the word poet. What is a poet? To whom does he address himself? And what language is to be expected from him? And he answers, he is a man speaking to men. A man, it is true, with a lively sensibility, blah, blah, blah. A man pleased with his own passions and volitions. So he's involved in communication with other people. This reminds me of a quote where they say, poetry is where people say things that other people have said countless times before, the same idea, but he says them better than anybody else. He finds the perfect way to express these ideas. And in many cases, it's true. Not every case, certainly. Okay, I'm moving on to the next highlight here. I'm sure that little bit about recollected in tranquility is here somewhere, but I'm not going to go and search for it right now because we have a limited amount of time. Here's one quote. Poets do not write for poets alone, but for men. Here he is with the men. I don't know if I should blame him for speaking that way because everyone spoke that way at the time. But maybe if he were a modern person, he might say men and women or for two people or something like that. He mentions that I already forgot. That using meter to tell his stories is powerful and meaningful to him. Also, let's just note that the spelling of cheerful with an A like this is common at this time. Blake uses it as well. Here's another spelling that is now no longer used, developed with an E at the end. Here's another typo. Yes, that's exactly right. Okay. Thanks, Google. He's emphatic about this idea. He said he wished to draw attention to the truth that the power of the human imagination is sufficient to produce such changes even in our physical nature as might almost appear miraculous. The truth is an important one. The fact, for it is a fact, is a valuable illustration of it. I don't know why he's saying that, and it's not important to our lesson, so I'm going to move on. Okay, I think we got most of this stuff. Yeah, there it is, that's the end. From what I just said, and reading the poems, the reader will be able to clearly perceive the object which I have proposed to myself. The object in this case meaning my objective. He will determine how far, again with the he, the reader, well, of course, at this point, it's still, even though there's public education, it's the boys who are going to school, not the girls. An educated girl is quite unusual and is usually taught by a private tutor, usually at home, not at school. So in that case, I suppose, yeah, it's almost valid to use just he and not he or she or something equally clumsy. Anyway, the reader will determine how far I have attained to this objective. And what is a much more important question, whether it be worth attending. And upon the decision of these two questions will rest my claim to the approbation or the judgment of the public. Okay. I'm looking for a second just to see. He may have said that bit. Oh wow, look at the spelling of ancient. A-N-T-I-E-N-T. Ooh, that's very interesting. So actually, it's possible that Coleridge's spelling of ancient in Ancient Mariner was not just an imitation of old-fashioned kind of writing, but in fact a modern spelling. Just not modern for us, modern for them. And this is going to be important here. Hey, they're talking about Alexander Selkirk. Alexander Selkirk was a sailor whose ship wrecked, and he washed up on an island, and he lived there for a period of time, all alone, trying to find a way to live until he was rescued. And this is what Defoe used as the basis for his Robinson Crusoe story. Right. Just by the way. Oh, these are the notes. Okay, that's enough for that. They get enough of the main idea, so that's good. Today we're doing distance learning, and it was pretty far distance except for the two who just came by. Resolution and independence. And if time after that, we'll start with Coleridge. Let me just look through this for a second. Right. I think in my mind I was getting two different poems confused. One of them is Simon Lee, and the other one is this one, Resolution and Independence. Okay, this is the story of an old country man who has little ability to work and earn money except by a kind of career which is not really done anymore. The job is a leech gatherer, and it seems to me that I may have made a link to a picture of let's see what it says. Oh, this is an illustration of leech gatherers here. What they do is, see, there's this kind of worm lives in the water, and the way that it eats is by gathering these leeches. Leeches live, I may have lost the train of thought there, but leeches live by consuming the blood of whatever creature it latches onto. It sucks the blood out of them and is nourished in this way. So these people are leech gatherers. You can see in her hands one leech that she just found and is putting into her little St. Bernard style barrel. This woman also has a barrel. These are leech gatherers, right? I may be able to show you. Oh yes, here we go. There they are. Leeches. Well, you know what they say. It's a leech's own. These are leeches. This one is apparently on somebody's arm, I suppose, with this part fastening onto the arm and penetrating into the bloodstream to suck up blood, which is stored in the body. They're pretty gross. Oh, thank you. You can see a bunch of leeches here. But you may be saying to yourself, why would someone want to gather leeches? Well, I'll tell you. Back around this time, people didn't know very much about biology, medicine, science, and stuff. They had learned a lot, but we've definitely made big strides since that period. And one of the theories that they had was, if someone is suffering with a sickness, what they do is they put a leech deliberately on the sick person's body, either sick or feeling bad, depression, other things like that. And what the leech's purpose was to do is to suck out the poison they imagined was in the blood, which would remove the problem which they thought the person had, and they would become better that way. Doctors would use leeches as a treatment for melancholy, which is a kind of depression. It's garbage, of course. There's no scientific basis for this. But, they didn't know. They were, in the early stages of learning about medicine and stuff. And so doctors would pay people to bring them leeches, and so this is what these people are doing. I'm not going to go into every little thing here, but let's check out the rhyme scheme here. And again, we're going to second guess a little bit some of these rhymes. For example, let's look at the B's here, and the C's too. The A's are okay. Okay, we have, for B's, we have the word floods with an vowel. We have woods with an vowel. And broods with an vowel. Now, they're clearly meant to be rhyming words, but they're all half rhymes. Otherwise, exactly the same after the last accented vowel sounds in each line. So that's why I had to mark B regular, B with one indicating a half rhyme, and then this one has two indicating that it is another half rhyme. Here's the same kind of thing here, chatters and waters as a half rhyme. But, you know, who can really say? These are people from England, from, 220 years ago, or 218 years ago, I suppose. And they might have pronounced all of those words the same then. I'm sure someone has done enough study to know a little more better. Oh my God, did I say more better? I'm sorry. A little better than I know, if that's true or not, but for our purposes, let's just call it half rhymes. Okay. He sets the scene a little bit here. Here's where it starts to get interesting, and they meet the main character. And by the way, I should mention, generally speaking, for Wordsworth poems like these, the narrator is assumed to be Wordsworth himself, the real Wordsworth, not Wordsworth as a character, but he's just supposedly telling a story of what happened to him personally. Anyway, so I, Wordsworth, was a traveler then upon the moor. I saw the hare that raced about with joy. I saw the woods and distant waters roar, or heard them not, as happy as a boy. Oh, you know what? I misread that a little bit. He was a traveler. Okay, so here's another half rhyme. Holy and melancholy. Again, in modern times, no rhyme. He's just walking around the earth, feeling happy. He had a thought about Chatterton. Let me tell you about Chatterton briefly, because I don't know a whole lot. The main point of Chatterton is that he was a poet. He was considered a prodigy and early genius as a young person. And he wrote, lots of good poems. But he died very early in life, never really reaching adulthood even. And so people often use Chatterton as a kind of a symbol for, for a genius who dies early. Kind of like Mozart, who died when he was 37, poor kid. But anyway, here we go. Here we meet the dude. As a huge stone is sometimes seems to lie couched on the bald top of an eminence, meaning a high place. Wonder to all who do the same espy, meaning to see or notice, by what means it could thither come and whence, so that it seems a thing endued with sense. He's talking about a huge stone up in a high place. But that is kind of the way this man that he's seeing now seems to be kind of like that. You're not sure if he's alive or dead or asleep. He had an extreme old age, which at that time in life was probably 65 or something. Extreme old age, And to tell you the truth, it's not so surprising with the amount of ignorance that the doctors had at that time, that people died early. Anyway, this dude, this old man here, his body was bent double, much like you see people who do, pick up recycling and push their carts around and their backs are all bent over. his feet and head coming together in life's pilgrimage, just like I said. He was bent over as if a more than human weight upon his frame had cast right. Himself he propped, limbs, body, and pale face, upon a grey staff of shaven wood. And still, as I drew near with gentle pace, upon the margin of that Moorish flood, motionless as a cloud. Clouds are not always motionless, by the way. But that's not what he's trying to say right here. Motionless as a cloud, the old man stood, that heareth not the loud winds when they call, and moveth altogether if it moved at all. Again, you may feel that words like heareth and moveth are very old-fashioned words, but this is written, more than 200 years ago, so it was the language of real men at that time in this rural location. Okay. I'm going to skip a little bit here. Wordsworth goes over to his side and says, "This morning gives us promise of a glorious day." A gentle answer did the old man make in courteous speech, which forth he slowly drew. And with him further words I thus bespake: "What occupation do you there pursue?" Pursue, maybe I should say. "This is a lonesome place for one like you." Before he replied, ere meets before, a flash of mild surprise broke from the sable orbs of his yet vivid eyes. Sable is a word which here means black in color, because there's a mink-like animal called the sable, as I believe. And so they use that to represent the idea of blackness, of color. I'll skip this one, meaning that he is weak and old. And he says that to these waters he had come to gather leeches, being old and poor. Here are the leeches again. Employment hazardous and wearisome, and he had many hardships to endure. Interesting that poor and endure should rhyme. Maybe it's a change of pronunciation over the years and across the pond. From ponds to I'm not sure if that was a subconscious thing where I noticed the word pond there or not. Many British people talk about America as being across the pond, on the other side of the pond, meaning the ocean, from where they live. Okay. From pond to pond he roamed, from moor to moor, housing with God's good help, by choice or chance, and in this way he gained an honest maintenance. So in other words, he is able to earn some money selling leeches to doctors and just trusting to God to provide him a place to stay as he wanders around. It doesn't sound like he has a normal home. The old man still stood talking by my side, but now his voice to me was like a stream, scarce heard. Nor word from word could I divide. So in other words, Wordsworth stops listening and just kind of hears it as background noise. So he asks his question again, which is a little rude, and he says, "How is it that you live? And what is it you do?" And he says, "Nay, we are seven." No, that's the other poem, sorry. He says, with a smile, that he repeated his words and said that gathering leeches far and wide he traveled, stirring thus about his feet the waters, the pools where they abide. In other words, where the leeches live. Once I could meet them on every side, but they have dwindled long by slow decay, and yet I persevere and find them where I may. Oh, the last line is hexameter. Okay, yeah, same. Okay. While he was talking thus, the lonely place, the old man's shape and speech all troubled me. In my mind's eye, I seemed to see him pace around the weary moors continually, wandering about alone and silently, while I these thoughts within myself pursued, he, having made a pause, the same discourse renewed. Oh, it's almost done here. So he just kept talking about the same thing, the leech gatherer. We never learned his name in this one. Soon, with this, the other matter blended, cheerfully uttered, with demeanor kind, but stately in the main, so he had some kind of self-dignity. And when he ended, I could have laughed myself to scorn to find in that decrepit man so firm a mind. And here's the conclusion here. Much like Shakespeare ends with a rhymed couplet, so the same thing happens here. Wordsworth prays to God. Which God is a little debatable. But he says, God, said I, be my help and stay secure. I'll think of the leech gatherer on the lonely moor. And that was written in 1807. So this is one that was added to lyrical ballads, if my memory serves me right, after the first and second editions were done, or maybe it was printed separately. I can't quite remember. But it's a good example. So he takes, let me see, how is he doing? According to his own standards, he uses the natural way that rustic people speak, rustic meaning shan. He uses rustic subject matter, and his emotions, his dignity, his painfulness of his body, his age. All of these are real things that people really encounter in life. And Wordsworth himself apparently actually met somebody like this. Okay, good. Anything else here? No. All right, I'll close this one up. I'll close the leech because I don't like leeches. This is a cool picture, though. I wonder who did this one. It says leech finders here, written apparently in pencil or something. I cannot read these tiny words here. So I'll just close that. Okay, what's next? We won't be able to finish everything. But let's start to learn a little bit about Coleridge. And I'll mention what I mentioned to my English literature class the other day. And that is that Coleridge's name, when I was a kid, reading Coleridge for the first time in high school, I thought his name was Coleridge because it looks like Coleridge. But then I read a poem that he had written, not an entire poem, but just a phrase, a couplet from a poem of his. And he says, I will pursue and walk along the whole ridge, and if I don't, my name is just not Coleridge. And so, I mean, I'm only making up the content, but the thing is he rhymed whole ridge and Coleridge. So now I know, and now you know. Congratulations, you learned something quite unimportant. Good job. Okay. We've talked about this already. We talked about that. Okay. Now, Coleridge here contributed to lyrical ballads. I feel like, oh, I'm so sorry, it's hard to wake up, it's an 8 o'clock class. The things that Wordsworth was saying about Coleridge's poems, his contributions, only 4 poems, but the longest one in the whole collection was indeed The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Coleridge said that, we too have the same attitude and the same approach to poetry, so I thought they would blend right in. I disagree, at least with The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, definitely. Instead of trying to use the language of real men and talk about things that would really happen to real people, he instead was talking in his poems, I'm reading now, what an ordinary person would experience if something supernatural or mysterious happened to him, assuming that it really could happen. Yeah. So in other words, he puts regular people into a supernatural, magical kind of situation and describes the way the ordinary person would respond to these bizarre things that are going on. Except that we don't have a whole lot about the ancient mariner's personality and the way he responds to things. He just kind of observes most of the time. Let me entertain you. Oh, yeah, frames third. One of the most popular of Coleridge's poems is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Here it is spelled in a more modern style, with ancient spelled the normal way. Mariner means a sailor, someone who is a mariner, if you want to mispronounce it. The word rhyme here is an old-fashioned spelling of rhyme with an R-H-Y in it. The original, earliest version that was published in Lyrical Ballads, originally published 1798, he spelled ancient in this way. We just noticed how Wordsworth also used that spelling, so it may not have been so much an antiquism, but it does feel older than this. The spelling of mariner, I think, is also intended to sound old-fashioned, oldie-timey kind of things. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, another way to say that exact frame is, that exact phrase is, it's a poem spoken by an old sailor. Yeah, that's what it means. One of the things One of the things that I wanted to emphasize and show you is the way the poem developed over time. Coleridge worked on this poem, starting with the most old-fashioned possible language. He made up weird spellings just because they looked old-fashioned, even if they were just imaginary spellings. And made it very old-fashioned. What his goal was to write a poem about the Middle Ages, which was written in a way that suggests or imitates the way people wrote in the Middle Ages. Except most of it is just bullshit. But it gives the feeling, it's the effect that he's trying to get. Over the years, he regularized and modernized the spellings of many of the words, and rephrased a lot of them, like eftsoons is a real word, that they used back then in the Middle Ages, and it appears very early in this poem. Thou graybeard loom. Now see, he uses words like thou, which was popular when Shakespeare was alive. That is not the Middle Ages. That is the Renaissance. But how old is it? That's something I don't know. Let me give you the essence here of the story, and later on we can take a look at the different editions and the way they changed over the years. And I think my impression is that he kept changing and clarifying things in the poem because some critics said it was hard to follow, it was hard to understand because of all the weird spellings. And plus the story doesn't make any sense. For many of Coleridge's most famous poems, in fact, like Kubla Khan and Christabel, they're all written in a very old-fashioned style. And the stories really don't make much sense. And so it's reasonable for critics to criticize him and say, you know, this poem doesn't mean anything. I can't understand it. I can't figure out what the story is. So I think that hurt him. Maybe I'm projecting, but it may have made him want to clarify everything. And every time it was republished, basically, he made new changes, including later on in, I think, 1813, I'm thinking. He added captions or little blurbs on the side explaining what's going on in each of the different sections of the poem, kind of a summary of the action of the story to make it even more clear what's going on. But here's the basic story, his idea. There's a character called the wedding guest. We never learn his name. He's just a wedding guest traveling along with two other people going to a wedding. He never gets to the wedding at all. Instead, he is stopped by the ancient mariner, and this ancient mariner is an old man, an old sailor. And he says, "Stop! Don't go anywhere." And the wedding guest is unable to do anything about it. And he says, the mariner gazes at him with his eye, and the wedding guest is unable to move or do anything but listen to the story. In the story, the ancient mariner was a young sailor. And so they set out from church, and they pass a lighthouse, and then they go south. In the sky, after a little while, shows up an albatross. Now this is an albatross. You may look and say, that looks like a seagull. But I'll tell you, friends, seagulls may be pretty big, but albatrosses are huge. Like, you stretch out their wings, and it's like 7 feet across. It's really big. 7 feet. 7 feet. About I don't know, 2 meters across, something like that, from the end of one wing to the other. They're really big. Okay. Now, there's never any kind of explanation at all for what happens next. Click to find out. No, you don't need to, because I'll tell you directly. The mariner kills the bird, shooting it with his bow and arrow. And here, for people who don't know things, we have a picture, or we will soon have a picture, of a crossbow. These are modern crossbows. It's like a combination of a gun and a bow and arrow. They put the arrow here, they pull the string back, and you fire apparently by pulling a trigger. This is a pretty good example, so I'll just stick this into the thing. Ta-ta, whoa! Okay. He shoots him with a bow and arrow, actually a crossbow like that. As soon as he kills this albatross, and again for no reason, the wind stops blowing and the sailors blame the mariner. They punish him by hanging the albatross's body around his neck, presumably with the wings coming over his shoulders and crossing in front of him. And remember, this is a gigantic bird, heavy, and it stays there for quite a while. Okay, there's an interlude here where they see a ghost ship. A ghost ship. This is certainly not the activities of people who are experiencing normal life in the country. They're on a boat in some magical, evil world. There are two people on the ghost ship, if you want to call them people. One of them is death, and the other is life in death, like a zombie. They're playing dice, the sides, and life and death is the winner of this game. Life and death wins the crew members, and they all fall down on the deck. Boom. Except for the mariner, who survives. Then the crew get back up again, but they're still dead, so, like I said, this is like zombies. I'm not sure if I got the order of this correct, but at one point anyway, the mariner tries to pray to God. He wants to pray to God and pray that, that he could be relieved from this terrible situation, because it was a lonely time. A lonely time. And he tries to pray. He's not able to because his throat is too dry. He takes a bite out of his arm, breaking the skin, and gets some blood into his throat. And when he's able to do that and pray to God, the albatross falls off his neck and into the water. He must have been standing right at the edge of the ship. Finally, the ship approaches England. This is stuff you can read by yourself and probably, or maybe, I would hope, some people have already read this. The ship approaches England. The crew's spirits fly to heaven, and then there's a little boat. There's a lighthouse keeper and his son in the boat, and a hermit. Oh, what's a hermit? Well, I'll tell you the truth. A hermit, I want to finish this quickly. The hermit is a religious person who lives in a cave and prays all the time. That's enough. The ship sinks down into the water like lead, which is a heavy, soft, poisonous metal. And they bring the mariner's body onto the boat and the little rowboat, and are astonished when the mariner moves, and they all have an extreme reaction to this. The lighthouse keeper is upset and screams or whatever. The lighthouse keeper's son goes crazy. I mean, I'm not saying that myself, that's from the poem directly. He now does crazy go. But the mariner begs the hermit to forgive him, to shrive him for killing the albatross, which was a sin. And apparently the mariner does get his wish, the hermit forgives him. But from time to time, ever since he was this young man, he goes around in life, wandering around, and once in a while he sees somebody and he knows, I gotta tell this story to this person and they must listen to me. So the wedding guest character is one of those people that he identifies and says, I need to tell you my story. And so that's why the wedding guest was stopped and listened to the story and he could not help but hear the story. And now, when the message is done, the story is done, and they're both kind of normal again. And here's the message at the end, which doesn't make any connection to the story, really. The message is, be kind to nature. What the heck? Coleridge later regretted the way that ended. He said, well, there should be no moral to the story because it doesn't make any sense. And a lot of people agree with him, including myself. I think it's a dumb ending. I wrote a paper about this one time, though, and tried to explain a possible explanation, but I don't even believe my own writing. Okay, well, we reached the end of the summary of the poem. We'll get into the actual poem next time. So thanks, everybody, for watching this video. Please, as I said, I'll tell you what to do. Please send me an email to oshuhua, that's OSHUHUA, @gmail.com. Please don't use my untech.edu.tw, that is wrong. I use Gmail. And in the subject line, please include LIT2, your English name, and your student number. In the body of the subject, please say the word present or the word here. And one more word, without which you won't get credit for being here. The magic word that you need to add to the body of your email is the word talcum. Talcum. It is a kind of powder. Okay. That's all for today. Thank you so much for viewing this. I'll see you again later. Next week, in fact. Now, next week, we may be using some kind of streaming service. We may be doing it this way. I can't see the future any more than you can. But whatever it is, I'll put it on e-class as soon as I'm able to do it. Okay, thanks. See you later. Look, I'll be looking for your roll call email in my inbox. Thanks. And now I can cough finally. Okay.